Hello, we're going to give everyone 20 to 30 seconds to go from our waiting room to the group. While we wait, we'll have a quick poll to see some of the information, what level of user you're coming from, and some of the content that we put together for future groups. So you should see that come up on your screen now. Great. And we'll have that going for about another 15 seconds. And in the meantime, while we're going through that poll, if you guys have any questions at any time, below at the bottom of the screen is the Q&A button, and go ahead and click on that, and you can type your question at any time. So we're going to end that. And all right. Well, thank you again, and welcome to today's virtual user group. My name's James Allen. I'm a product marketing manager here at Smartsheet, and I put together the local user groups. And would like to thank you for joining us today. And because we have lots of folks attending, everyone in the meeting will be muted in the beginning. And to give a little insight, the Smartsheet user group program was created in response to Smartsheet users who've been requesting more opportunities to connect and learn from each other. And while some user group meetings are virtual, we will have in-person groups starting sometime in the hopefully near future, but it'll be hard to say when those come back again. And as I mentioned earlier, if you have any questions, feel free to use the button on your screen that says Q&A. And we have a great group today, and we have a treat from, we have our CMO joining us today, Anna Griffin. And with that, I'd like to hand it off to you, Anna. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, James. Hello, Pacific Northwest. I am so excited that you guys joined us today. I'm going to take you through the agenda, and then I'm going to jump right in. So first of all of us at Smartsheet just welcome you. When I think about the folks on the other side of the screen, or I can see your faces, you are what I call the best of the best. You inspire us. The work that you guys do, the companies that you're leaning and leading for, or just, and the things that you're doing are truly the best of what we get to see in terms of utilizing Smartsheet and pushing both it and you and your companies into a new area of possibility. So welcome from all of us, and we're hopefully going to inspire you with some new thoughts here today. I'll speak for a few minutes, and then I'm going to turn it over to Kelly Drake, who is a senior project manager at Starbucks, who has exactly one of those use cases, and she's going to share with you some of the work that they're doing and hopefully inspire you in terms of ways to think about, Smartsheet. It can do so many things that can have so many quick yielding results to kind of push a company to its edges in terms of advantage. And she's going to share a few of those. You'll be able to ask her anything, which I'm super excited about. I think that's one of the best parts of these is speak up, please. You are amongst friends, and we're all here to try to help each other out. So please feel comfortable asking anything. Then we're going to turn it over to John Cicero. He goes by Cicero. For those who've been to Engage, he always wears the bright neon yellow shirt, which you'll see him wearing today. He wears it every day, not just at Engage. So he always stands out in a crowd, and you know where he is. He is the master of training here at Smartsheet and knows every ins and out. So he'll do a dashboard demonstration, but he's also a great person to ask anything as we go into Q&A at the end. So with that, we have a great session, and I'm going to jump right in. So if you go to the next slide for me, James. Make no mistake, I think everyone knows exactly where the world is right now. It is super dynamic, super fluid, and our work is more dynamic than it's ever been. And when I look at, if you go to the next slide, James, when I look at the work that you guys are doing, Chris Vaness, I wanted to give you a shout out from Starbucks, who is building a solution to to help track those ever-changing store moments, closing, openings at Starbucks for over 16,000 retail locations, and utilizing Smartsheet to be able to pivot and do that real time. I'm blown away with what you're doing. So Chris, shout out to you, and shout out to Alex Collins at Nordstrom, who is building a smart store so they can track all sorts of store level tracking for loss prevention and just better operational efficiencies. And when the team was telling me about that and just the whole smart store concept, I just wanted to make sure I gave you a shout out as well, Alex. So again, thank all of you guys. And we're going to talk about some of those ideas in just a minute. If you go to the next slide. You and everyone on this line is exactly why we do what we do. We make this product for doers. The people who have that can-do spirit, who say, give me your toughest challenge, I'll find a way. And we build a platform, as hopefully you have come to find out, exactly for that, for you to be able to tell it what you need to get it done. And those infinite possibilities that only you know that you may need to create or react to make real change happen. And that's our mission. And we want to make sure that you are enabled for this world in front of us. Because if you go to the next slide, this world is throwing us more challenges than probably what we ever thought possible. We knew for really the past couple of years, that changing nature of work and living in this paradigm of an old way and a new way, and this excitement of whoa, could we try some of these new tools? But then the reality of working, in older processes, and you couple that with COVID, and we find ourselves in a situation that we are all feeling tested like never before. If you go to the next slide, that change and that speed of the change that just hit us, with 88% of workers working from home, and the productivity challenges that we're having. At first, I think it was a beautiful idea and reality that awesome, we're all connected, we're all able to easily up and Zoom and WebEx, and great, and we're all collaborating and more connected than ever before. Yet that pain point of the challenge of just because you're collaborating does not mean you're more productive. In fact, I think that the productivity challenge is just starting to come full circle in terms of how do you take all of that great ideation and turn it into something that is actionable, that has accountability, visibility, and that people can ultimately drive. If you go to the next slide. That coupled with work that was already changing. Make no mistake, work has become more ad hoc, more, less planned, more make it up as you go along, and it needs to have, a new level of flex because it has this fluidity that it's never had before. And when you pair that with the shortage that we're having in developers and this rise of needing no-code platforms, to be able to action work on your own and not have to wait or have a 3-month, IT implementation, coupled with work also being more distributed than ever. 50% of all work takes place out of the office. And now coupled with COVID, it's all taking place, outside of the office. But that ecosystem of vendors and partners and everything that has to connect together has certainly been on the rise. And James, I don't see anything on the screen. I'll keep talking because I can go from memory here, but I think the guys might want to see the slide. I'll give you a second to recover.
Is nobody else seeing anything either? That's interesting. Okay. Sister, do you want to take over the deck for me? Apparently.
Yep, give me 2 seconds.
Sorry about that. That's weird.
Yeah, and I'm going to keep talking because I don't want to waste time. I want to get us right into Kelly. So I'll keep talking a bit from memory, and we can catch up on the slides. Also, guys, we'll distribute these slides to you so you have them as well. And so, playing off of those shifts, what's really been exposed is the old way of working. It's siloed nature. It's slow. It's unconnected systems, static work trying to compete with dynamic work. Perfect. If you go to the next slide. There you go. This pain point is real for every enterprise today. Now, most of you guys have figured it out, but even then, being able to utilize a platform like Smartsheet, you're still trying to have to utilize it within an ecosystem in your company that's still working, in many, with many of these pain points and many processes that are still stuck in specific silos. If you go to the next slide. And that's ultimately what we've got to solve for, because I think companies have always known, the past 20, 30 years, how to get innovation out of an organization. But the how and democratizing that innovation is where we're seeing real opportunity. So, gone are the days of, waterfall, linear systems, legacy. Tops down management will push, an initiative, and it will come to you, and you will wait, and you will do your part, and then you will pass off to the next function. Has given way to agile, much like what we've been seeing in, software development for the past 20 years has now called up with the rest of the organization. That kind of agile disruption, that requirement that if we can get that much more effective in things like DevOps and software development, imagine what we could do if we could take agile to the masses. And that's exactly what we're building the platform and its capability to do, to take, that agile-like mindset to be able to have everybody, working across the, the company with that kind of visibility and real-time accountability. There's a book that just came out last year. It's one of my favorites. It was an original book in the 90s. It was a management book that looked at like the best managers in the world. It was called First Break All the Rules. And it was every manager that was kind of like set in the way. And they went back to that original group, republished the book 30 years later in a book called It's the Manager. And this was their epiphany that while the world's workplace has been going through this extraordinary change, like there's an app for that, every new fandangled technology to be able to do anything that you need to do, all in the name of productivity. It's there, but the practice of managing work is the same practice and process that it was 30 years ago. So you go to the next slide. That's why you can't have like the old and the new. You can't have all of these new tools working in a way that's a new delivery system, if you will. I call that the Netflix conundrum. You can never put Netflix over a rotary phone. So here we are, in this moment in time where we have the new ways to work. We have, but we've got to ultimately bring the process and the management system and the organizations around to realizing, the capability of what we can do is there. But now we've got to have this new way of thinking and acting and bringing, cultural transformation to our digital transformation. If you go to the next slide. So to adapt to this dynamic change, if you go next slide, we like to call this the dynamic layer. And what we see companies really, and you can go right on to the next slide too. What we see companies building is this momentum of dynamic work platforms. And that's ultimately what we're trying to enable more at Smartsheet today, that ability where everyone can collaborate from a central source. They can keep pace with that constant rapid change and have that agility to meet the demands of modern work. And we do that, if you go to the next slide, one more slide, with what we're calling a dynamic work platform, which sits right in the middle, next slide, of the enterprise stack. So when you think about the enterprise stack today, you have your systems of record, which is your tops down, mission critical, data of the company, and it's on rails and it's static intentionally, as it should be. But then you've got, on the bottom layer of the enterprise stack, you've got, emails and docs and calendars and all of our communication and collaboration tools, which are endless. And that ability to connect these two worlds is what we're finding is more critical and important than ever. If you go to the next slide, those systems of records, they require scalability, security, that idea to be able to have some type of visibility who's accessing the data, some sort of accountability, into to compliance of the data, and it also has to be to unify. But at the same time, those what I call more the bottom up tools, those collaboration tools, those cannot be prescribed. They have to be adaptable. They have to be empowering. You have to be able to stand it up. You can't wait necessarily for IT to come and provision a solution for you. You have to be able to collaborate with all of your external partners, not just those systems with inside of your company. And so when we think of what the dynamic layer, this new layer that needs to be built into your enterprise stack, it's got to meet those needs of those systems of record and that bottom up, preference and individual preference, of the work initiator and the work style of the company as well as the individual. And we call that, the next slide, ultimately, the dynamic layer. This is the dynamic work platform, and it's what we're working really hard to advance. You're going to see a lot of exciting new advancements, really bridging these two worlds as we move into Engage later in the summer. But a deeper alignment into those to the enterprise down to the bottom, so you can scale some of this work completely, end to end. The next slide. As well as enabling, those preferences of security, scalability, and that user-driven, adaptability preference of the teams. And the next slide. And then unifying it, where you can really start to unify your people, your processes, and your technologies. So when we think you can start to build and connect, these different systems, these different preferences, these different investments that the company has already made, and get more out of those systems by making them dynamic, this is where we're deliberately focused to make sure that entire organizations are going to be able to get the most out of their existing platforms, but also start to add that level of dynamism in real time to the things that feel more static. If you go to the next slide. And just a sample of that. So, I think of, Smartsheet, you sprinkle Smartsheet into your Salesforce and you get a dynamic CRM. Sprinkle Smartsheet into your SAP and you get a dynamic ERP. And again, a lot of thinking here, if you go to the next slide, of where we're trying to take, that need for dynamic solutions. This world that's moving at this rate, we're seeing use cases and reinvention of complete functions of tried and true establishments. So, portfolio and program management, deeper business processes and ops, starting to take agile workflows across the company, those distributed workforce solutions. They're the business cases that we're seeing that start to flow into this new world, and use cases that we're trying to continue to plus are really critical right now as the world moves into this next chapter. If you go to the next slide. And the benefit, and this is, I think, the most interesting piece that we're seeing a ton of, is the real effect of this is not just, operational, effectiveness and you're getting more out of your company and getting more out faster, but it's really the next slide. It's the empowerment. And it is not lost on anyone that today's worker and workforce wants to make their work matter. They want to do more than just run a system. They want to know that what they do matters and that they're empowered to do it, that they've got tools that support their needs because they want to go further, faster. And that's where we see, our most gratifying, results, is that ability of empowerment, the right size tool that can have an entire organization working at their preference and need and feeling, empowered. And if you go to the next slide, this is where I am going to play a quick video. We'll see if it works, just to kind of show you what does that look like when you have a dynamic workforce.
Next slide, Cicero. Yeah, there we go. Oh, back one.
Oh, audio.
It has to come from mine. That's the whole. Sorry about that, Anna.
No worries. Guys, we'll send this to you. It was just the empowerment piece, you're trying to capture people don't want to be slowed down. Their tolerance, there's a waning of the old way, keeping them from being their best, contributing, and making the most of their capabilities. And we feel like we're pushing hard to kind of free that, and to make sure you have a platform that gives you what you need to be empowered in the workforce.
So going to hand it off to you, Cicero. And while we're doing that, we can...
Oh, you're on mute.
I thought I clicked that. Let's start again. So hi, everybody. I'm going to talk primarily about dashboards and things like that, but I wanted to hit on a question that Frank had asked just now about the index match. So for people who haven't seen it, I'll give you an example quickly here with that. And I'm going to go into one of my examples, and let's see, here we go. So I have a sheet here, and I'm just going to show you. For instance, this is a very simplistic version, but you have a list of departments and the appropriate managers. And so in my case of this, I will ask somebody, what department is this relevant to, or whatever. And by virtue of knowing these managers, I can then send them an appropriate approval request. And so it goes to the people that need it. And the way that then gets set up, and here is the intake sheet with the form that would fill that. And you see here's my manager column. Well, in the manager column, this is where I'm using that index match. And what it's doing is it's saying, go to this other sheet and match the appropriate department. And you saw that column of department. And then based on that, use that to bring in the appropriate manager. And so index match is actually two functions in one, but that's what's taking place. And regardless of where I move those columns on that other sheet, this still brings back the information that I want. And if HR is updating those managers, I don't even have to worry about who it is because they're taking care of that. My approval request, for instance, in this workflow is going to go to the right person. Even if somebody leaves, there's going to be a new one there, and it's automatically going to pick that up. And so that's how that index match works. For other people too who are potentially intimidated with those amazing formulas that Kelly did, there is a way to get some help. And if you go to the Solution Center, I'm going to go here. If you actually search on formulas, you will see that there's a template with examples of all of the functions that work within Smartsheet. And you'll see an actual example, and that gets updated about every quarter. So as we add new functions, they're also on here. So if you're looking for different places for help, here's another one that I would strongly suggest. And so now let's go and talk about the dashboards, because Kelly's dashboards were amazing. And the thing that I find is people want something like this, right? I want to bring all of this in. But really what they're starting with, and let me get back to that, is they're starting, oops, there we go. They're starting with this, right? This is our data that's coming in, and they want to take this and make it into this, right? And how do we do that, right? Where do we go? Well, the first thing that you want to do, again, just like Kelly was saying, when you plan your full solution, you plan your dashboards. What do you want on these dashboards? How do you want them laid out? Now, this is relatively simplistic, but knowing what you want on your dashboard is part of planning your solution, because what comes out on the other side is dependent on how you've designed everything on the beginning, on the sheets that you're using, because you have to get that to put it here. So laying these things out, I will always start with some sort of drawing. Like I said, I whiteboard everything, even have a whiteboard here in my house, but that way you can lay out what it is you need and then say, okay, now based on that, and I look at my whole solution, where am I going to get this? Where do I bring that in? Okay. And so that's the first piece where you start, is laying it out, understanding what it is you need, potentially before you ever even start creating your first sheet. So you know, as you're adding these sheets, adding these columns, where this information is coming from. And so that's one part of this. Now, the other part, and this is, again, what Kelly was talking about, I have this dashboard, that's great, but I leave, and now it dumps on Kelly, and she looks at it and goes, great, where did all this come from? Right? Well, what my biggest suggestion to you, if you're not doing it, is to use metric or roll-up sheets. A metric and a roll-up sheet allows you to bring in data from potentially hundreds of sheets and aggregate it in ways that you want to then display it. So you're not necessarily, and Kelly had mentioned using like sheet summary to do some of your math. If you're only working with a few sheets or things like that, totally, that's a great idea. But if you want to have it all come kind of to a spot, I use metric sheets. And you'll notice that I've color-coded my metric sheets. I also, when I do these to hand off, I'll put notes in cells to say, this is where I got it. This is what my thinking was in the formula, all of those different types of things, so that you can just hand this off. In Smartsheet last year, I moved to a different department, and I was able to give the new manager my metric sheet, and she was able to just pick it up and go, oh, this is where you got all that. Okay, perfect. And there was no drop of the ball. And that's what these metric sheets allow you to do. And if you'll notice, I do a lot of cross-sheet formulas. Cross-sheet formulas are awesome because when you're looking at a different sheet, and I'm going to go into this example here, if I go to edit reference, it's going to take me to the sheet that it's actually coming from. But the nice part about using cross-sheet formulas is you don't have to put ranges of columns. All you have to do is click the column itself, and that is what gets used in those formulas. And so it's a way to make it quicker to bring that over. And so I kind of get lazy and I'll use metric sheets because I don't want to use ranges on my sheet. And so I'll just use cross-sheet formulas and do it all right there. But this is one way, again, to help you prepare based on your original plan of that dashboard. Okay, is to do this type of information. And you'll see I've got a number of different types of functions, counts, count ifs, all of those ones that Kelly was talking about, the if statements. Okay? But that comes here. So then we go to the dashboard itself and we look at this, and my dashboard has some good parts. It has some not so good parts, but at the end of the day, your dashboard is about who consumes it. And that's exactly what Kelly said, because who consumes it decides what you're really making, right? What do they want to see? What is important to them? Okay? What do they need to jump out quickly? And one of the things that I always talk about is the 5-second rule. In 5 seconds, when that consumer looks at my dashboard, are they getting the immediate information that they need right away? And that's the first piece. The second thing to think about when you're looking at dashboards is, where do I put things? And if you look at studies on dashboard creation and dashboard use, you're going to see that people will hit a dashboard with their eyes at the center, and then they're always going to move where they start reading. Well, predominantly, we go at the top left corner is where we start reading. Therefore, that's where our eyes are going to look for the most important things. And so when we do this, that's what we want to think about. What you're going to find is most people put a logo there. Well, that just lost a huge spot for you to get the bang for your buck on that dashboard. Is that. So think about where that is. Where would I put a logo? On the right side. okay? Because that's where people are going to get to. The other thought that you want to have with this is how long should it be? Okay? The most important information should be at your screen without you having to scroll. It should always be right here. Now, they could have more information if they scroll, but the important things are here. If an executive is looking at your dashboard, they don't have time to hit and go, oh, I don't see it, I better scroll. Okay? Didn't make points. Okay? What they want to see is, what do I need right away? Boom. Okay? And people always ask me, well, what should I have on my dashboard? I said, did you ask your consumer? Well, no. Well, then how do you know? Because what I need and what they need are completely different. And so that's the other piece, is how much are you showing? And another concept of dashboards is and this is actually based on printing way back, it's limit the amount of ink. And in other words, don't clutter your whole view with stuff, right? It should have enough to give you the information you need, but not too much as to overdo what you're seeing. We are visual. And so that's the key. Now, the other piece of that is color. If you'll notice, I said that the top left was where my eyes were going to go. And that's true. I go, whoop, and I'm looking over at my dashboard. However, I have this rainbow of colors on the right-hand side that is pulling my eyeballs over there, right? It may not be. If it's important, it should be on the left side, so it keeps my eyes there. But it's like an eyeball magnet that pulls it over here, right? That's the things you think about when you're looking at designing these dashboards. Now, on that idea still, you notice that I have a full dashboard here, and let's assume we didn't want people to scroll down. Well, then what do? Right? We nest those dashboards, and nesting dashboards means having links to dashboards, 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 and you see that on the right-hand side here. I just made 3, but what I've got is I've got a home button, I've got a field ops, which is a sheet, and another one that's a training. And so rather than making this ridiculously long scrolling dashboard that no one's ever going to get to the bottom of, right, I'm giving people what they need when they want it. And so if I click in that on that link, you notice that visually I have told them that you are now here, because that is not an active link anymore. And I'm here, but I've also given them a way back home. So I'm not telling them, oh, you've got to go up to your browser and use back. And no, I don't want them to leave my dashboards. So by doing that, we are able to nest, give them, each dashboard gives them the most bang for their buck, and their experience is that much better. Okay? And so having the ability to do this is super, super important. Okay? And we'll talk about these different widgets in just a second, but these are just graphics. Okay? Just graphics that, and you can tell that I made them, but they're just graphics, but that's all it takes. Okay? Now let's kind of look at some of these other things that I have. You notice that I used metrics here. I've got these numbers. These numbers are coming from my metric sheet that I told you about. And certain things, that's what I need. I need a number. Boom, it jumps out. Okay. Do I color that number? How big do I make that number? Again, all visual cues for my consumer. But then I also went down, and you notice that I've got 2 types of charts here. I've got the horizontal bar chart and then a donut, a half donut. Now, if I had the same information, and I should do that so you can see, but which one would my eye see the difference of quicker? Would it be in the pie slices or in the horizontal bars? The horizontal bars. Okay? And so picking the right chart for the right type of information is also really important for making the best dashboard you can make. Okay, is how do we do that? And you notice with people with pie charts and things, For small numbers of comparisons, they're amazing, just like Kelly was showing. But the more things you get in a pie, the smaller the pie pieces get, and the less I can tell the difference of those different things. But a bar chart will always show me difference, no matter how close they are. And
Hey,
so,
and sister, sorry for
yes.
interrupting, but Jen had a question.
Oh, sure.
You said, what do you create your graphics in? I've used PowerPoint to save as a
Oh,
JPEG. Is there a
no,
better
the
way?
graphics here. Oh, these graphics. I'm sorry. Yeah, I use 3D Paint, but I've used multiple different ones. It kind of depends, and sometimes they work out good, and other times I'll get something from the internet and then tweak it. One of the key pieces for your graphics is that you want to save them in PNG format. And the reason you do PNG format is because you can have a transparent background. Otherwise, you get, and I did this on purpose, but you get this kind of view of a square around your picture. And so you don't want that. So if you use a PNG format with a transparent background, the picture then gets absorbed into your dashboard and it looks that much cleaner and cooler. Okay. Show you a couple other things here. We've got a report that I've used within my dashboard, depending on how you want to do that. And you'll notice that it is actually showing conditional formatting from my sheet. So you can actually bring that over and let it help pop the information on your dashboard. I've put in shortcuts. Shortcuts are amazing because it gives people access to all kinds of other things. And it's real time what they need right there. Okay? And so, doing that, again, super helpful. I've put two examples here where I've embedded a slide deck, a Google slide deck, and also a video from YouTube. Okay? And depending on your audience, that might be huge. Having a slide deck come up, depending if it's a presentation you're going to do it right here. Okay? The other is embedding a form. If you're needing to collect information while you're presenting, or it could be a dashboard that you're presenting to your manager, but you want your manager to respond back with task ideas or things like that, why not put it right on the dashboard? And so this would be a perfect example of, if you need to submit it, scroll down, right? And then that goes right into another sheet. And it could let you know when they've submitted it. All of those different types of things can happen with all of this taking place. And so if we look at that, what I want to do now is I clicked on edit, and we see the actual layout of all of the widgets that I used within this dashboard. And we'll go into a couple of these, but to start, how many do we have? What do we have? And that's here in add widget on the right-hand side. We have 8 different kinds of widgets to bring into this dashboard. Metric widgets, which are what you see over in like the ThoughtWorks number, things like that. The charts, the shortcuts, we talked about that. The report, bringing in information that a report, so a report can bring multiple sheets together and now just surface that on a dashboard. Okay? So you're seeing what you need to see at the right time. The images, this is the widget that I used on these graphics. Okay? And I'll open that up in a second so you can see that. But then the title widget, rich text. Rich text is great, but don't overdo it. If you have to explain your dashboard too much, then the dashboard isn't what it should be. People should know what your dashboard is without having a ton of text to read to understand your dashboard. Remember the 5-second rule, right? So that's a piece to think about. And then the web content widget. The web content widget is what I use to bring in forms. It's what I use to bring in the video and the slide deck. And Kelly had mentioned even embedding like a Tableau Viz from Tableau Server. You can do that with this too. Okay? And so all of those use the web content widget. Now, let's just look at this graphic here, and I'm going to open it up. And it's just a simple graphic that you grab, you picked it from somewhere. But where the power is here on the right-hand side where it says advanced options. In advanced options, you notice that my home one is gray. And it's gray because obviously I'm already home. So you see the action is do nothing. But for the ones that go to the other sheets or the other dashboards, I'm using go to a Smartsheet item. And so I'm able to then link to those other sheets or those other dashboards, and they never have to leave where they're going. Now, you could then say, well, oh gosh, how am I going to make all these dashboards with all of these? Couple ways. One, if I know that this is going to be the layout of my dashboards, I will make essentially my first dashboard with these icons and things like that, and then I will just save as new. Just like Kelly was talking about doing that with a sheet, I'm going to do that here with dashboards. So I get the most of my work done first, and then I can just duplicate it. The other, and this is a feature that has just come out a couple months ago, is the ability to then right click on a graphic or any other widget here and say copy. And I can copy that and actually go to a different dashboard and paste it right in. And so I don't, if I want to use things in multiple dashboards, I don't have to, kind of recreate things again and again and again. I can copy it and move it over to the next one. And in that case, I usually keep those as tabs, so it's much easier to get to, but that's another way to do this. But all of this, all of these, the charts and so on, all come down to the fact of planning. And as you're planning your solution, you're also planning on your presentation. How are you presenting all this information, and what are you presenting to those executives, to those managers, to the staff that all need it, and whatever that is. And keep in mind that all of this information is being calculated potentially on those metric sheets, but taking it from the sheets real time. So these numbers are always up to date as things are changing on my sheets. That's the power of this. You don't have to wait, it's there. So hopefully that gave you a whole bunch of things to think about. This is really a great thing to experiment with and troubleshoot, but again, think of the consumer. That's the biggest thing I could tell you is, and draw it, and you will be successful. Questions?
Yes. So Carol has a great question. Are metric sheets essentially an amalgamation of reports?
Not necessarily. The difference of a metric sheet like this versus, say, a report, and I will go out of here and let me get a report open. Here's a report, and the report allows you to aggregate information from sheets, a sheet or sheets. Okay? Using the report builder, we're able to then decide on what sheets to look for, and then what are the filters of those sheets. And it allows me to present the columns that I want to see. So you're seeing the rows and the columns that you want to see from however many sheets you have. But you're not doing mathematics, you're not doing calculations, you're not doing aggregations in the report. You could create a report from different aggregations, but predominantly you're using those reports to bring out information from all over different sheets that match certain criteria. Whereas in the idea of the metric sheet is all about aggregation of data. It's all about bringing in the right numbers. And so, this formula here is looking at the company called Jetwire. How much is this total sales? But that formula could actually be coming from 5 different sheets where different sales are kept, or however you want to do that. But it's going to aggregate it. It's not going to show you each individual row that match Jetwire, which is what I would use the report for. So the report aggregates rows and columns to show you and visually see those things, but the metric sheet is to bring that data together to show in charts or metric widgets or things like that. So now the other use of a report is the bidirectional use of a report, which allows you to then see just those rows you need to act upon, and you can interact with that report as you're actually interacting with the sheet underneath it. So it just depends on what you want to do with that. So hopefully that helped.
Thank you, Cicero. Since this is a quick question, since you format on the original sheet, does that mean that you don't have the flexibility to change formatting when presenting information on different dashboards from the same source sheet?
If you're using conditional formatting, you're really looking at the sheet itself. So even though you're bringing it to the report, that comes across. So on the dashboard, we're just actually bringing data from different places. So the formatting there is very limited to things about headers or things like that. But if you want actual formatting on the rows, for instance, or specific cells, that's when you would use that on the individual sheets and then bring those through with reports. Now, what you can do, and I'll go to the report, you'll see that you have the ability to bring in, this formatting. Now on the dashboard itself, when I go into it, you can actually either choose to or not to remove that formatting so you have a different look of your sheet. But that's where kind of formatting and so forth happens. The dashboard is more of a window to your whole solution rather than a place to actually make changes.
Okay. And then from the same person, when you use cross-sheet formulas, how does it function when you add rows to the source sheet?
That's the cool piece. So I love cross-sheet formulas. When I go here, and let me go back to my metric sheet again, because we saw that and I'll just pick one. All right, we'll take this one. You always know a cross-sheet formula because of these curly brackets, and unless you've physically changed the range name, they're always going to be the name of the sheet and then range 1, 2, 3, or whatever that is. But the positive about that is if I go to that reference, mentioned that you are able to grab the whole column in one click. Well, that means no matter how many rows you get added on that sheet, it will always add those up. And so it's click and go, okay? Now, however, if you are actually picking an area, that is not going to change, okay? The only time areas change within any type of formula is if you're adding something in between the ends. If you add in between the ends, it stretches out your range. If you add something at the bottom or the top, it doesn't fall into the range, and so you won't get it. So that's a caveat to always remember with your formulas and ranges. But I just grab columns. That's why, again, I cheat, because I love cross-sheet formulas because I don't have to worry about it. I grab the column, boom, I'm done. Okay, that's the positive of that.
And then last question, do you have an example of a sheet that is interactive / dynamic to adjust the data, like a Power BI dashboard? That was from Ariel.
And so Ariel, I'm thinking I'm not sure, so I'm going to kind of guess. So dashboards themselves are not technically that interactive. If I wanted to, this probably is going way deeper than most people want to hear. But if I want to have essentially a what if scenario within Smartsheet, what I'll do is I'll actually do that on, say, a metric sheet. And if I have multiple options, if it's July and the color is blue, count how many of these are, I will actually make a sheet that does that, where I've got a drop down for each, and my formula is a cross sheet formula to the other sheet, taking into account those things, those variables, to give me the data that I want. Now, I have had it on a dashboard where you could click on it and it would take you to this. You could change it. And as soon as you saved it, the dashboard changed to that. But we don't have that concept yet on dashboards for real-time kind of what-if scenarios.
And then I had a couple questions just for mostly towards Kelly. Do you find that others and leaders in your organization go to Smartsheet to look at the data that you put together?
Yeah, sometimes. So I will say what I've found helpful is actually adding the creating a Smartsheet dashboard and then adding it to a Teams channel with work from home from COVID. I have been incredibly grateful that Starbucks has leaned into using Teams. And so adding that to whatever the relevant thing is to the top line bar in Teams as a bookmark or whatever they're called, it makes it easier for leaders to reference or to access. No one needs to remember the link. That's been one thing that's been helpful. But we do, like, that is still something that at least my organization is trying to unlock.
And then Jen had a fun question that I think you can identify with. I've been labeled as our company Smartsheet guru, and now have tasked to create lots of intense dynamic dashboards and sheets in lieu of COVID-19. And I'm not a project manager, and my current role isn't even related to using Smartsheet. Similar to you, I'm a Smartsheet nerd and love creating formulas. How would you recommend in leveraging Smartsheet to further, the career path for anybody in general?
Yeah, I think for me, I've heard a lot of things. My team and people that I've just worked with, and even some of the Smartsheet folks. I've heard the Oprah of digital transformation. But I think the one I'm settling on is I am a Smartsheet Jedi Knight, because anyone can learn how to be a Jedi. It's what someone told me anyway. I haven't seen all the Star Wars movies. Don't at me. But I think for me, what I'm doing is really looking at how can what I do be, what's that job description? The career development, anything that I've done for career development or mentors that I've talked to, they've said that a lot of the time, you just have to be bold enough to ask for your next step. I'm really grateful at Starbucks that all of my leaders, all the way up to my SVP, are all really invested in making sure that we are doing things that we want to do. That's not always been the case. So I hope that for you, Jen, that is the case, but it's figuring out what do you want to do and how can you write that job description for you that, I will nerd out in Smartsheet till the cows come home. Yeah, I'm totally from the Midwest, but so, hopefully that's hopefully that's helpful. It's just what do you want to do with it? And, convincing your leaders, hey, if you give me this lane, this is what I can do for you.
Oh, that's great advice, being bold. We see that often where people are utilizing the platform and it's not just taking off their career, but for them personally. And then Sue has a great question that I think pretty much anybody here could answer, but I think, Kelly, you'd have great insight. Where do you recommend someone go to learn Smartsheet functions and capabilities? Is there a class or just Google/YouTube?
So, I guess I can start, but I learned first by just clicking around, and then, hey, Google. And then there was a Smartsheet community, and then I also attended the Smartsheet 201 as well as the 301 classes. So it was they were over here in Seattle in the suburbs. And it was, the 201 was 2 days, and when I did that course in December, so Nitro installs were done, and the whole 2 days I was like, wow, that would have been nice to know when we were doing Nitro. And so they're super helpful. And then there's also just checking in if the company you're at has a environment, finding the fellow Jedi Knights. Hey, what are you doing? I'll show you what I'm doing, and just learning from each other.
Oh, that's perfect.
And I'd remind
sorry.
people too, don't forget that formulas template that I showed you, because the nice part about that, and I'll go through and read it kind of all the time just to remind myself of different functions, but it gives you an example and it'll show you what it does. So that also helps, because many times, I mean, I don't have them all memorized, but what I'll do is if I need something, a date or a text thing, I'll start reading down through those to say, okay, oh, that's the one I need. Okay, I'm going to use that. So being able to refer to that definitely helps, and we have that on our on our help pages also too.
And something else is, not just our webinars, but our Smart Start webinars are great. They're put on by Erin on our team and Anna, and they do an amazing job of educating people. And those are twice a month, and I highly recommend those. And then also we have user groups frequently. So if there's ever a topic that you're interested in, we have a portal that you'll be receiving a link for after the group. And we do have one more question. When you are writing complex formulas, use an editor that helps your format so you can see your nesting. Although that's a good comment.
Yeah, that's actually a comment, not a question, but absolutely. I actually use Notepad++. So it definitely helps because it gives you more real estate to work on, and it also lets you increase the font size, because seeing somebody missing a comma and things like that can be hard to see in a small formula. But if you have it on a bigger area like a text program, you can actually do that. And then you copy it and paste it right into the cell. One kind of a helper here is when you're creating a formula, all formulas start with the equal sign. But if you want to kind of keep a running idea of what your formula is evolving into, take the equal sign out and save your sheet. It will save that formula in cell history. If you keep the equal sign, it'll save the number, the value. So if you want to see those in history, take out the equal sign, save your sheet, and then put the equal sign back in, and now you've got a running history of the formulas that you're creating.
I will also add, I don't know if it's appropriate, but I will also add, when I'm creating those monster ones, I actually prefer to do it in Smartsheet because the rainbowness that was on that slide exists in Smartsheet. If it's not rainbow, I know I'm missing something. I'm missing a reference. I'm either missing an at row, or I'm missing a bracket, or I'm missing a comma. And then I don't know, I just probably squint at my little tiny thing. But
And the also other part that Kelly, and I agree with Kelly in that too, is we have the inline help for our formulas. And so it will actually help you walk through the syntax of those functions and follows you with that little highlighted area through the formula. And so I use that a lot to kind of decide, where am I? And I look down and go, oh, okay, use a comma here. And it will help me walk the path of that formula.
Awesome. All right. Well, it's about 2:30, guys, and we want to be respectful of everybody's time. Thank you so much, Kelly. We can't say thank you enough, with amazing perspectives, amazing solutions that you've put together. And thank you, Cicero. And we hope that everybody here found some inspiration in the Smartsheet stories and demo presented today. And after the group, you'll be receiving a follow-up email with a form. And if there's something you'd like to see in the next group, let us know. And we definitely take that feedback and put it into our next group. So thank you, and we'll look forward to seeing you at the next group.